All right. The bank, the credit. So please talk to me, Miss Benjamin. All eyes on Sinead, please. Everybody look at her. 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 Ideology.
Look at her.
What are his beliefs in the role of government?
That he believed that the national government should be weak, and the state governments should be more strong.
Okay, so stronger state governments, good, and a weak national government. Cat. Okay, Republican ideals, small government, good. Eli, what type of interpretation did he prefer? Louder. A strict interpretation. That should be in your notes, absolutely. Good. Good. Who does he think should be in power? Who should have say?
The state.
The state, sure, but in terms of like in government, who should be in control? The common man. Not the elite, not the rich, but the everyday farmer type of dude. Good? Good, good, good. Chavez. Like that jacket, you look good. Guy? What type of economy does he prefer?
He wasn't for the national bank, right?
Okay. He's not pro-bank.
Agricultural.
Agricultural, good. And not just agricultural, but like yeoman farmers, this small, self-sufficient, everyday farmer type of person. Good. Nice review, guys. Nicely done. Nicely done. So today, as you see in your notes, we are, as I unfreeze my screen, discussing the election of 1800 again, just as a starting point. It's the end point of period 3 and the start point of period 4. It's that important of an election, as well as just for today, Jefferson's presidency. So some eight push math for you. Josue, if Jefferson serves 2 terms, how far are we going today in history?
8 years.
8 years. False. 9 years. Because you get elected the year before you take office. So we're going to go 1800 to 1809 today. As you see in your notes, it's 4.1. Today is the first day of period 4. So those of you who are struggling today to start new or not, continue your existing old habits and keep being you. Those of you who are doing well, that's a day to renew those habits, those positive, strong work habits, study habits, reading habits, testing habits. Those of you who are in between, period 4 is normally where things begin dividing themselves into the haves and the have-nots, the no's and the no-nots, the pass and the pass-nots. Period 4 is when things get a little more in-depth in terms of things you kind of don't already know. All of you had some sort of background knowledge coming into this class on like the Revolutionary War, on the Constitution, on George Washington, on colonization, because a lot of that is covered at least superficially in 8th grade. Obviously, we went to a lot more depth than you had prior. So we're still learning a ton of new stuff, but period 4 is really where we're building off of a blank canvas. We're building on an empty foundation. Where how many of you have heard of the Transcendentalists before?
Wait.
Exactly. How many of you have heard of Jacksonian democracy before? Right. How many have heard of Clay's American System before? How many of you have heard of the Hartford Convention before? How many of you have heard of Martin Van Buren and the Panic of 1837? My point is, period 4 is no. My point is, I've made that point many times. My point is not that you should have known before. My point is that period 4 is the first time in which you're being exposed to a lot of stuff you know nothing about before. You can't BS period 4. Period 4 also has a lot of different layers of things going on, long-term trends, economically, politically, socially, that we'll need to tie together. We'll need to. Period 4 is the challenge. Period 4 is oftentimes kids' favorite period or their least favorite period. Because you get it or you don't. So I tell you this because in period 4, more than any other period, I'm going to need you to come to class prepared. I'm going to need you to come to class with your text read. I don't need you to come to class with your text fully understood. That's unrealistic. But I'm going to need you more in period 4 than any other period to meet me halfway. To join me in the middle. To do your legwork ahead of time. So that when I'm lecturing and we're reading primary sources, it's not like I have no idea what the hell is going on, what this is talking about. A lot of you emailed last night, hey, this came up, that came up. The copy machine freaking screwed up 8 people's text. I have no idea what the hell happened. I apologize. I make 60 copies at one time for our chapter, and 10 of them only came with one side, not 2 sides. Right? Go blame the Konica Minolta machine. It's terrible. So I understand those kinds of things, but those of you, for whatever reason, email me at 11 o'clock on a Sunday night, hey, Mr. Winch, I couldn't get my chapter read. Okay? What am I going to tell you every time? Things happen. If you need a little extension on the handout, let me know. But the minimum I need you to come to class with during every period, but specifically period 4, is at least come to class with the text read. Because that way I'm not speaking off of a huge confusion level of I don't know what the hell's going on right now. Because at least the text gives you some backbone, some structure about what the hell's going on. Okay? So I'm giving you that spiel, that speech, because it's the first day of period 4, and I know period 4 can be a struggle. Period 4 goes very quick as well. Period 4 is only 10% of the test, whereas period 3 was 12. Period 3 is more important test-wise. But in period 4, a lot of stuff you learn that makes other things later make more sense. So this is when America starts to actually become America. So that in order to understand later stuff, we got to know period 4 well. Okay? Excellent. Let's get started. Your prompt is here. It's a long prompt. Santos, read it for us, please. Our prompt reader. Nice and loud.
With respect to the federal constitution, the Jeffersonian Republicans are usually characterized as strict constructionalists who are opposed to the broad or loose constructionism of the Federalists.
Stop there. This is background knowledge. We should know this already. In general, we look at the Democratic Republicans or the Jefferson Republicans as the strict interpreters. Agreed? Right? Virginia-Kentucky Resolution. Anti-elastic clause. Anti-federal government authority. States' rights. In general. Santos, continue.
Evaluate the extent to which this characterization of the two parties was accurate during Jefferson's presidency.
Ooh, how much is this label that we give them earlier still accurate through Jefferson's presidency? I don't know. You don't know, sir? Here's your key concept. So, reviewing from the very end point of period 3 is this election of 1800. Now, every election matters. Every election has consequences. You should always vote. In every election, local, city, state, county, national vote in every election. They all matter. But in 1800 specifically, it's a very important election because it demonstrates the peaceful transfer of power from one political party to the other.
Yeah, can you take a 10? Thank you.
One political party to the other. Now, does this happen in every presidential election?
Once in a while.
Does it?
Kind of.
In every presidential election, we have the changing of power.
No, I mean something
Well,
staying the same.
we just had it.
It often stays in the same party, but whenever it changes, do people die?
No.
No. And that's the key here, is we don't know how this is going to work, and it works quite well. It's the first time in U.S. history, really it's the first time in modern world history on this scale that this happens. Yes, ma'am? Yeah, this peaceful revolution. As you see in the electoral map, it's a very close election. Jefferson beats Adams 53 to 47, percentage-wise. So it's quite close. And in his inaugural address, this first speech he gives to the Congress that then gets printed out and distributed all over the country, he has a very important message that says, we are all Republicans, we are all Federalists. Take a minute, talk to the person next to you. What does he mean by this and why is this important? Why is this the message of his first speech to the American people? 1 minute, go.
Just to say that we're all American.
I kind of agree. I think they said that all Americans and that she's not trying to work for the Commonwealth.
Good reference, Eliam. All right, so let me stop you there. Linda, talk to us, kid. What does he mean by this? Why does this matter? Where's he going with this?
So he basically said, I guess he's doesn't want them to fight anymore. So he basically says that they decide to be Federalists or Republicans.
Okay, sure. Eliam, I heard you make a really good point. Good job, Linda. Talk to us.
Jefferson wanted to avoid Adams' mistake of only with the Alien and Sedition Act. So he wanted people to feel like there's a side they can go to and it doesn't matter who they are.
Yeah, we're all Americans. We're all Republicans. We're all Federalists. We all want what's best for America. Let's avoid these what are called partisan struggles, fight party against party, and try to all do this together as one country. Yeah, I was going to bring up the point that Eli brought up for us, that it's important. He's trying to learn from the mistakes of Adams in creating policy that divides the country, and instead wants to create policies that unite the country. That's his goal. We'll see how he does. So, like Kat just pointed out, that's why this peaceful revolution of 1800. And his goal here is to return to the spirit of 76. What do I mean by this spirit of 76? Talk to me.
Was it 1776 when the Declaration of Independence was like?
The Declaration of Independence is signed, yes? Who wrote it? Him. He wrote it. Cool. So he's going to return to those ideals of power to the people, anti-monarchy, anti-too much power in the government. To return to this idea of self-government, of republicanism, of us in this together uniting for a common cause. It's important that we note that Adams really is the last Federalist president. Ever.
The first one.
First and last. Yeah, we can put Washington in that group as well, though. Jefferson's presidency begins a 30-year run of dominance of Democratic Republican and then Democratic rule of the White House. We have Washington and Adams up first, and then we go straight Democratic Republican for Jefferson, Madison, Monroe, and Quincy Adams, who's almost as attractive as his father. Almost as attractive. He's like an egg. He's like a bearded egg. Yeah, a bearded egg. And finally, we'll get to Jackson about halfway through this period, when the Democratic Republicans split into two different parties, and then we have Democrats and Whigs. But we'll get there when we get there. So I have this picture. It is actually from much later in the curriculum. We'll get to this in the 1880s and 90s for the populist movement. But I look at this picture as Jefferson's ideal America. This is the America that Jefferson wants to create. If we all agree that this is Jefferson's ideal America, what does America look like? And what role does the government play in everyday American life? Two questions. What does America look like? And what role does the government play in this conversation? A minute 20 time by the partner. What do we see here? What do we see the government doing? Go.
In that scenario, I guess the role of the government would be to protect from any invasion and to protect any rights regarding property.
All right, I'm going to stop you guys there. Rubia, speak to us. What does his ideal America look like?
Peaceful and quiet, calm.
Peaceful and quiet, okay? Sure. Santos, build on that, please.
It's very agrarian.
Very agrarian. Yeah, very agrarian. Open spaces. Look at these dancing horses. Horses and cows are living together. It's so beautiful. So beautiful. Good. What else do we see? Talking Cat, thank you for the hand up. I appreciate that.
What Kevin said, because Jefferson was so in favor of like farmers,
Uh-huh.
the common man, as like
Yeah, it looks very common man, right? Everything's where's the big factory? Do we see it? No. Everything is it looks like everybody's producing goods and work and wealth from their own work. Where's the National Bank? Yeah. And so what role do we see the government playing in everyday life? Almost none. Yeah, we see no real everyday, day-to-day presence of the federal government. And that's important, because that's a huge Jeffersonian ideal. So Jefferson enters office with a very clear ideology and some very clear goals. We know his political ideology. How do we know his ideology? We've been reading his stuff for freaking 30 years. Have we not? Declaration of Independence, Virginia Statute of Religious Freedom, Virginia Constitution, the state constitution during the Revolutionary War, Virginia Kentucky resolutions. We know what his ideals are. He's made it very clear. Anti-big government, pro-agrarian. Some of his goals: to reduce the size of the national government and reduce the cost of the national government. To reduce how much government is government. There's a great line that really sums up Jefferson's ideals. It says, "He who governs best governs least." He who governs best governs the least. Which tells me that he believes that the best government is the littlest government possible. Strict interpretation. The government should only do the things that the Constitution says it can do. He wants to get rid of some of these Federalist policies that expand the government, that make things go against the federal government's authority, like the Alien Sedition Acts, like these midnight judges we'll talk about in just a minute, so hang tight on that. And he wants to maintain that international peace remains. He wants to keep this peace with the French, keep this peace with the Spanish, keep our peace with the British. Let's just keep ourselves out of foreign problems and just be good to go. Now the issue arises when he needs to compromise or modify some of his ideologies to be an effective president. What does that say about him? If he needs to change some of the things he believes to do his job well, how can we characterize him?
Responsible.
Responsible? Someone in first period said hypocrite? Maybe. Or just reasonable, I don't know. Last year's kids came up with a good thing for Jefferson. He's a walking contradiction. Right? Believes in freedom, owns a bunch of slaves. Right? And then we'll be able to add like 7 more contradictions up to that list of contradictions by the time we're done today. Right? So if we attach Jefferson as a walking contradiction, then it helps. What does it say though? That you need to change your beliefs in order to do a job well? I don't know. We'll come back to that. So this slide is just here for a big picture, zoomed out look of Jefferson's presidency. So I'm going to give you some of the key points we should know. First, he believes strongly in republicanism and civic virtue. I keep coming back to that term, republicanism. Consent of the governed. People having a say in their government. But when we pick people to represent us, how do we expect them to represent us? Yeah. Well, okay, sure. How else? Another word.
Hearing the people.
Virtuously. Right? Doing the right thing by everybody, not looking out for their own self-interest. If we elect our government, we give them our power, they should do the right thing and not just take advantage of it for their own good. Sure, that's civic virtue, right? He believes strongly in federalism, in dividing power between federal government and state governments. And he believes in states' rights. But federalism does not mean federal government power. It just means the division of power between federal government and state government. There's some confused cases. That's federalism. And he believes in this federalism balance, where should more power be? States, yeah, exactly. States' rights. He believes that yeoman farmers, this everyday common class of farmer dudes, is the ideal perfect citizen. He believes our country should favor agriculture over the manufacturing of industry. What did the last party do to favor industry? Talk to me about some of this. What do the feds do that favors industry?
National Bank.
Bank, yes. What else?
Revenue. Your tax.
Taxes, sure. There's another clear, easy one.
Tariffs.
Tariffs, yes. Tariffs encourage industry because they encourage people to buy American. That encourages people to industrialize. So he's going to want to get rid of all that stuff because it favors industry over farmers. He believes that we should not have any alliances, but we should be spreading democracy with examples to other countries. And in society, he believes some important things. He believes strongly in Republican motherhood, that women should stay out of politics, but they should play a huge role in raising responsible citizens. For this. He believes that Native Americans are capable of being citizens, but they need to come out of their millennial ideas of savagery. He believes that black people are inferior, but he's very conflicted on slavery, even though he's a huge slave owner. But one of his huge beliefs we should also note is his huge belief in the separation of church and state. That religion is here, politics is here, and they should not intermingle. Right? He's the guy that wrote the Virginia Statute of Religious Freedom. Very important foundational document that gives us this ideal of church and state being separated. So that's him. There he is. Looking good. So goals-wise, he wants to reduce the size of the federal government, reduce the cost of the federal government. To do so, he's going to cut the size of the army. Smaller military is cheaper. Smaller military doesn't allow you to do things like put down rebellion, like the Whiskey Rebellion. Right? He doesn't believe in a big standing army. He instead prefers the state militias to have control. That makes sense. That's his ideology. He gets rid of these Federalist taxes on whiskey, the whiskey tax that led to the Whiskey Rebellion. That's axed. He gets rid of the slave tax. That's axed. He gets rid of the property tax. Because that makes the government bigger. The government has more money to spend. The government hires people. It's a bigger government, so it's going to collect those taxes. He lets the charter or the permission for the bank, which is it's a 20-year charter, he lets the charter for the bank expire, so the bank goes away. So Hamilton is dead, and so is his bank. Sorry, Hamilton. And he wants to pay off the government's debt, because then the government can be really small and efficient and just self-sustaining and not be large at all. Right? Smaller government. Look at that. Look at that. See that again? Look at that. Yep. There we go. He wants to reduce the national governments and restore power to the state governments. Let the states run themselves. But these Federalists who've worked for 12 years to get their policies in play are not going to allow things to go that quickly. Yeah, that's a good, nice little review graphic. Strong central governments, loose interpretation, commercial, industry, business, financial, bank. States' rights, strict interpretation. Agricultural economy, right? So, what the Federalists are going to do on their way out of power is important to understand. Now talk to me, when are presidential elections held? And that also means for congressional elections. When are they held? November. Now let me give you an exact date. Not that date, different date.
November 5th, 1999.
No, I know that date. It printed in my Vote November 6th, always. Every November 6th forever. All right. When do the new president take office? January. But back then it was March. Because it took a while. You had to pack up all your stuff, get to Washington, D.C. It's not just the president, but it's for Congress, for the Senate and the House. They don't take office in the new term until March 4th the following year. You guys still with me?
Yep.
So we have a 4-month window. When is the election held? This year, 1800, yes?
Yeah.
Until March 4th, 1801. We have a 4-month window in which who's still in charge? Yeah, the Federalists are still in charge for 4 months before the Democratic Republicans take over. This is what's called a lame duck session of Congress. A lame duck session. In that they know they're dead, they know they're not in power anymore, but in the meantime, they still have power. You guys with me so far? Yep. Yeah, it's kind of crazy. So they know they lost. Adams knows he lost. The Federalists know they lose a lot of control of Congress, but they're going to try to get as much done as possible before they have to leave the power behind. And it's here in this 4-month window where a lot of stuff happens that's going to shape the country for years to come. One of the first things that happens is the Judiciary Act of 1801. It's going to add more federal judges. Now that's it's very constitutional. Congress's job. We saw the other Judiciary Act of 1789 earlier, which added all the courts below the Supreme Court because we needed a working court system. This is going to add more courts. It's complicated, but it's going to add more layers to the judicial system. And it's going to be passed 1801 by the Federalists. So it's passed. Let's go. Who appoints judges to the federal judiciary? President does. Okay, who's the president? Adams, okay. Who approves the judges that get appointed? Not just Congress, the Senate. Who controls the Senate? Federalists. So in this 4-month window, they're going to add a bunch of judges that are all Federalists. That's cool. That's their right. Now, a question for you. How long do federal judges serve? Well, forever is kind of an impossible idea. Federal judges serve until death or retirement.
Which don't retire.
What's up?
They don't retire, do they?
They do. Some do.
Oh.
They often retire, but if they die, they die. They're dead. So what this means is the Federalists are losing control of what two branches? The executive and the legislative. And they're about to hold on to power to the judicial branch for the next, until this generation dies. Is this constitutional? Yeah. Is it shady? Yeah. So this Judiciary Act of 1801, they're called midnight judges because some of them are literally getting their judicial appointments at midnight the night before Jefferson takes over. Because then it's his power to say no. Judiciary Act of 1801. Jefferson is anti these appointments and thinks this is shady. They're taking away the power for him to run the government. And when he takes office in March of 1801, he orders his Secretary of State, James Madison, to deny some of these appointments. I say we picked Rubia. Rubia hasn't gotten her summons yet.
What?
And now Madison is saying to Jefferson State and Madison, do not give it to her. Too late. I'm in charge now. She doesn't get her judge position. You guys with me so far?
Yeah.
At least it's a complicated and it's complex, and this part doesn't matter so much as you understand why this act is important and what comes next. One of these judges is Rubia / William Marbury, who's like, wait, I was promised a judge position. It was the president appointed me, the Senate approved me. I just didn't get my summons in time, my notice in time. And now Jefferson's president, and he's saying I can't be a judge anymore? Yeah, you'd have thrown hands. Or you could do the legal throwing of hands and sue. Same idea. So Marbury's going to sue Madison saying, I was rightfully picked for this position, and now you're saying I can't have my position. That's messed up, bro. Yes, sir. Wouldn't he win that? Let's talk about it. Marbury versus Madison becomes, in my opinion, the most important Supreme Court case in U.S. history. Because without Marbury-Madison, we don't really have any other Supreme Court cases. Let me tell you why. Let's rewind a week, or in American history, 5 years. We have these two theories of the Constitution, and who decides constitutionality. In the contract theory, who decides constitutionality? Be more specific.
Supreme Court.
The Supreme Court. The Supreme Court, as the final stop for the judiciary, decides if things are constitutional or not. In the compact theory, who decides? The states. And I told you last week, eventually, we're going to all follow the contract theory, but there hasn't been a case to test it yet. This will be that case. So the Supreme Court rules that Jefferson is allowed to do that because the president has the right to pick or not pick who serves until they're locked into office. So she'd have thrown hands and then she would have lost. So the Supreme Court rules that Jefferson's decision to deny Marbury his appointment does not violate the Judiciary Act or the Constitution. Again, a super boring case. It's not that exciting, but what does this right here establish? Every court case ever establishes precedent, or the idea that other cases will follow what was decided here. What was decided here? It has nothing to do with Marbury or Madison. Yeah. whether the act itself by Congress and the President was a constitutional act. That's the key. This decision is going to sound like the Matrix. This creates the precedent of precedent. Now, this is the first time the court does something that establishes that we have the right to check the constitutionality of a law or an action. The most important term to understand for this year, for this court case, for the Supreme Court forever, is judicial review. That they can use judges to review whether or not an act of Congress or the President is constitutional. Is constitutional. So they created the precedent of having a precedent. It's safe to say the Supreme Court kind of gave themselves this power, right? It doesn't say they could do that, but they're using it. Yeah, so it's kind of crazy that the Supreme Court just gives themselves the power to do this, and we have questioned it for 215 years. What do I know? So that's judicial review, and we have to know it. So I have a cartoon for you. It's a good cartoon. Who likes football in here? Yeah, who likes any sport? All right, cool. If you like any sport at all, this will make some sort of sense to you. So I want you to take a minute with your partner, please. Take a look at this cartoon. What's happening here? What is this cartoon trying to get at? And how is this going to help us better understand the principle of judicial review? 1 minute, chat it out. Go for it.
Oh, it's only like 4 known against like the entire team. And every state it's like, oh, it's constitutional. It's not. Like, you know, like Rams versus
So I'm guessing that the judicial branch is on the side of the...
like what if I'm going to, or if I'm going to or they're playing the rest of the arguments.
Basically saying
Again, it's showing how like it has more players.
so they're saying
All right. So let's talk about this. We have the executive eagles, the legislative lions, and what is the legislative branch doing, Daniel? What's the legislative branch doing?
Making decisions.
Yeah, they're spending money, making courts. Are all these things that they're supposed to be doing?
No.
Yeah, every one of these things is a legislative power. What's the executive branch doing? Pardoning, calling special sessions of Congress, recommending officials, vetoing bills.
Opposite.
Those are all executive decisions. Those are all things the executive branch is supposed to do. What's the judiciary doing, Brett?
The referees and the judges.
They're referees. Interesting. And what are they using as their rule book to referee? The Constitution. And that's that. Christoph, what sport do you like?
Soccer.
Soccer. What do the refs do in soccer?
They make sure the game goes well.
Yeah.
Like nothing shady goes on.
That's fine. Nothing shady goes on. They make sure that everything's in line. Everybody's following the rules. Elian, what sport do you like?
Basketball.
Basketball. What do the refs do?
They see if, for example, if any contact was between a player with either a foul or something more worse.
They're calling fouls. So that's judicial review. It's just calling fouls on the other two branches of government for doing stuff that is not constitutional. There we go. So one of these appointments, the guy who rules in Marbury Madison, is going to be one of the most important names in APUSH for the entire year. The Chief Justice, John Marshall. He'll get appointed to be Chief Justice at the very end of Adams' presidency, and he will then serve as a Federalist Chief Justice for the next 34 years. This is my point, but yeah, they may have lost control of the legislative branch and the executive branch, but the Federalist legacy lives on for 3.5 decades through the judiciary. John Marshall rules in a bunch of cases. Who's going to favor the national government and state governments? Yeah, so as our country is aligned with a political party that's more states' rights driven, every decision is going to benefit the federal government over the states. That's why the judiciary branch is so important. This federal Chief Justice is going to hold on to power literally until he basically dies in 1835. He is the first of many in an ongoing series that I like to title A Push People That Never Die. When we talk about something in like 4 weeks, I'm going to mention him. You're going to be like, what the hell, that fool's still alive? Like, how is he still around? We've covered so much between now and then. A Push People That Don't Die. Who's another one? Well, sure. He dies, though, in office. People that don't die, who are around for a lot of things. We'd say Hamilton, but he dies too. Supreme Court, sure. Henry Clay. William Jennings Bryan pops up first semester and second semester and some stuff.
Aaron Burr.
What?
Aaron Burr.
Aaron Burr, yeah. Well, he dies too.
Oh.
Henry.
No.
JFK.
Roosevelt?
Roosevelt.
He dies as president.
John F. Kennedy.
JFK also dies.
Lincoln.
Lincoln dies.
Oh.
Yeah.
So,
Trump.
he'll go away. So,
I mean, he's 70.
yeah. So, big picture, he's going to play a huge role in our course going forward. So it's important we know the context of him with the Midnight Judges and maintaining his Federalist ideology for a long time. All right, turn the page. I have a short text that comes out of Marshall's ruling in Marbury versus Madison. He's going to tell you why he believes what he believes about judicial review, and it's going to help us get our mind around what judicial review is and why it matters. So I'm going to give you just about 3 minutes and 30 seconds to skim that. And then answer the question, according to Marshall, what role does the Supreme Court play in the legislative process? Read it, answer the question, and we'll go from there. Go. pass it back to you, I strongly encourage you to keep everything. Valuable reference material. About 5 seconds or so. All right, so take 1 whole minute with the person next to you, please. I want you to identify what does Marshall mean? What does he think this word should do? And there's a really clear line in there that tells us what it is he thinks. Okay, so identify the line that really brings it home for us. 1 minute to do just that, and then we'll talk about it as a class afterwards. Go for it.
So I'm not really sure what that like because it's saying, of the Constitution. I'm pretty sure he's talking about the Constitution here. What also stood out to me was where he said, when he said the Constitution needs to be a superior permanent law, unchangeable but ordinary means or economical with ordinary acts and like other acts.
Yes, we can. Yes, we can finally go through this.
And then, well, yeah, there's a lot of.
I mean, you're good buddies.
I know that it has to be here because it says that are bound by instruments. I don't know if that's the Supreme Court
All right. So, talk to me, please. Sure, we'll go with January. Works. Come on, January. Jeremy, what is the Supreme Court supposed to do in the legislative process?
I really don't know.
Okay. Read it again. Kat, thank you. Hilda.
I don't really know, but like what stood out to me was that like the little like last, I want to say like paragraph.
Yeah, that's pretty important. The last paragraph is the one I'm looking for. Why does that stand out to you?
Because it's basically saying what like the Constitution should do and like, yeah.
Jesse, talk to us.
Oh, with the short part, because I haven't hit that too, but.
Well, just big picture, what role is the Supreme Court supposed to play?
Well, I'm not really 100% sure, but like in the middle of the paragraph, I highlighted the part where it says the Constitution all the way to alter, so I'm assuming it's in the middle.
What is the Supreme Court's? We just talked about it too, guys. What's the court supposed to do? Kat and then Cortez. Okay, what does that mean?
Basically to like establish the idea that anything that's like sketchy should be looked over.
Okay, sure, agreed. You're right there. Talk to me. Nice and loud.
The Supreme Court determines constitutionality of different actions or and limits departments that they can't like make a
Legislation. Yeah, that lost one.
Make a law that either strengthens themselves and it's not in the Constitution or goes directly against the Constitution.
Yeah, right there, guys. It confirms and strengthens a principle supposed to be essential to all written constitutions, not just our, but any written constitution, that a law repugnant to that constitution is void. What does void mean? Like canceled, gone. Any law that is passed that is repugnant. What does repugnant mean? Against, opposed to the Constitution is void, and that all courts, not just our court, every court below us, and all of the departments that are governed are bound by that instrument. That's judicial review. So here it is in Madison and Marshall's own words that basically saying any law passed that's against the Constitution is void and canceled. And it's our job to be those referees that look at the Constitution and look what you're doing and say, does that match up or not? Important. All right. So the Democratic Republicans don't like the fact that Federalists control the judiciary and will for a long time. They do attempt to judge, break, or get rid of some of the Federalists that are on the court. The only way to get rid of a judge, can you fire a judge? No. Only way to get rid of a judge is to impeach them. To find them guilty of a crime against the country. And the way impeachment works, we'll talk about it more later when we get to actual presidents to get impeached, or attempt to get impeached, is in the House of Representatives, they vote to charge you with impeachment, and then the Senate votes and they hear the case like a jury would. So Samuel Chase is a justice. The Democratic Republicans do impeach him, but they do not find enough to remove him from the court, which is important because it shows the Democratic Republicans don't like the fact that Federalists are on the court and trying to get rid of him. But the fact that they don't have enough votes to get him off shows this nice precedent that the judiciary can stay independent from political opinion being for or against it. Who votes for judges? Nobody. Who do elected officials answer to? If we elect somebody to office, who do they answer to? What? The people. If we vote for them, they answer to what we want. Agreed? Who do judges answer to?
No one.
No one. They answer to the Constitution. So this whole point is that the judiciary branch shouldn't be impacted by political opinion. They should just be that impartial referee deciding who's fouling and not fouling. All right. So now let's get into some of the other big pieces of Jefferson's presidency. They're a little more exciting and controversial. So under Jefferson's presidency, we see a huge population boom. But really, it's just a continuation of prior trends. When do you guys think American population really starts expanding? When do we start about population expanding? Wait, whoa, we're not even close. That hasn't even happened yet.
18.
Before this, when do we start having enough people to have a significant population? We're not even there yet. How are we going before that? We're going to 1803 over here.
17.
I said before Jefferson's presidency. Does that do enough for you? But that's my fault.
1790s.
1790s, okay. When's the first problem that we really have because of growing population?
During the
That's
Revolution.
also after Jefferson's presidency. You're done speaking for the next 5 minutes.
I didn't use that then.
When do we start having conflicts because of population?
Probably during the Revolution.
Okay? Before that, larger states want more people, sure. Anybody else? Yeah. All the immigration, that big wave over to America. When is that? Before that. How about the French and Indian War? Why do we fight the French? Because we want land. Why do we want land? Because population's expanding. When do we fight the French? 1754 to 1763. So let's look at my chart. Population is growing slowly. By about 1740, we have 1 million people. French and Indian War, Treaty of Paris, Declaration of Independence. By the time Jefferson is president, our population is here. Let's look at some numbers. Who writes the Declaration of Independence? Jefferson. Good. When he writes it, we have about 2 million people. We declare independence, we fight for independence, yada, yada, yada. Articles suck, Constitution, Washington's presidency, Adams' presidency. Excellent. From Jefferson writing the Declaration to him taking office, in 25 years we go from 2 million people to 5.5 million people. We almost triple in size in just those 25 years. Our population is growing very rapidly. Where's this population going? Spreading westward. It's not just the South. We see up here in the northern states, New York, Pennsylvania, New York up north, Vermont, Massachusetts, Ohio, Virginia, Kentucky. Everybody is spreading westward. We have 3 new states. Kentucky in 1792 is the first new state to be added to the country. Then Tennessee. And then Ohio in 1803. Review question for you. Will these states be free or slave, and why? 30 seconds, talk about it, go. 30 seconds, talk about it, go.
You know, the invention of cotton is like
Why is there a line?
because God said so.
Why is there a line?
God said so.
Why is there a line? Why is there a line?
Yeah, like the top of Tennessee.
Why is it? What put the line there?
Ohio is like.
No, it's not. Ideology doesn't put lines. Besides, you still have time that you're silent for. Who feels brave? Besides you, I don't want to hear your voice.
Brave about
Ruby! What's going to be the free versus slave situation and why? Talk to me.
Well, because of the Northwest Territory.
Oh, the Northwest Ordinances. Okay, because of that, what's going to be the...
Because of that, well, they prohibited slavery in those new states in the Northwest Territory. But then in the South, we see that there's a lot of slavery because of their agricultural life.
Okay.
So then that sets up a line between them.
Okay, where's the line going to be?
Between under Tennessee and above Tennessee.
Close. What's the actual line? This way. The Ohio River. Yeah, right there. Above Kentucky. So then keep going. You're right there. You're crushing it. I'm very pleased. Which are the free states and slave states that are added? Of these 3.
Free states are Ohio.
Good. And the slave states are?
Kentucky. No.
Huh?
Kentucky, Tennessee.
Kentucky and Tennessee. Everyone clap for that. That's all. I told you the only thing that matters under the Articles is the Northwest Ordinances and Shays' Rebellion. Nicely done. So under the Northwest Ordinances, everything north of Ohio River will be free. Only new state north is Ohio. Yeah. These guys are talking about, I'll say, where's the line? Ideology, because of this, because of that. No, it's not. I know. It's ideology doesn't draw lines. Laws draw lines. Excellent. So we're spreading out, but just like that, we already see some conflict over free state, slave state. Free state, slave state. Now, Jefferson is concerned that, over here on the map, if you guys can be so kind, the farther our population goes inland, common sense, the farther we are from the ocean. You guys with me? And the farther we are from the ocean, the harder it is to trade, to communicate, to get things in and out. And that, the farther we get inland, makes New Orleans more and more and more and more important. Because the farther we get inland, the more reliant we'll be on the Ohio River and the Mississippi River. Now, in the last couple of days since I saw you last, we've seen the Louisiana Territory and New Orleans change hands again. Who did we get permission to use New Orleans from? Spain. What's the treaty called? Peace Treaty. Well, guess what? Spain doesn't have it anymore. Due to a series of European events, it's back in control of the French. The French don't want to let us use it because we didn't have their back in the Revolution, and yeah, it's complicated. And Napoleon's a short little angry man. And long story short, we're worried about the fact that on French's mood that day, we can either keep or lose access to New Orleans. If we don't have New Orleans, we can't use the entire river. The farther we come inland, the more important New Orleans becomes. The more important New Orleans becomes. Check this out. Boom! It's a spinning star. Try this again. Count me down. From 3, 2, 1. New Orleans. So, very important. Very important. So what Jefferson does is he sends he sends a group, a delegation to France to try to buy just New Orleans. Because he that controls New Orleans controls the access in and out of the river. You guys okay? He's going to buy New Orleans. Now Napoleon has just taken over. He's crowned himself Emperor of France. He's going to run things. He's like, you know what? I'm about to conquer all of Europe anyway. I don't really care about America. How about you just bump up the price a couple $1,000,000 and I'll sell you the whole damn territory. And to tell you one thing you know about Napoleon.
He's poor.
He failed, sure. What else?
He's short.
He's short. Fun fact. First of all, Napoleon is taller than Louis.
Isn't he like 5'7"?
Second of all, Napoleon is average height for his time period. Which means the rumor that Napoleon is short comes from other areas of his life. The fact that Napoleon is short comes from elsewhere.
No wonder they call him Napoleon.
No wonder they call it Napoleon complex. So him trying to take over all of Europe was the version of him driving a giant truck today. And there it is. See, history can be fun sometimes. Good for him. I'm glad. So, I know. Now I see some kids blushing. This is fun. Brett might be blushing. So this is where we get that idea of there can be tall men can have a Napoleon complex.
Roger.
Yeah. I'm trying to dominate the world to make up for some other shortcomings, right? It's a good joke. It's a good joke. Yeah, it's a good joke because apparently Napoleon's sex life was also a joke. So, and now you know. Now you know. Huh? So, Napoleon realizes, I don't have any money. I want to take over all Europe. I need money because wars are expensive. And he sells the entire territory of the United States. 1803, Congress approves a $15 million purchase for the entire Louisiana territory.
How much is that? Like,
Not much. With one agreement, we've doubled the size of the United States. Doubled in size. It's pathetically cheap. It's the best land acquisition cost-wise in world history. It's absolutely ridiculous. Yeah, no, a steal of the century is when we actually stole land from Mexico, but we'll get there. So, it comes out to mere cents on the acre. Now, an acre of land is like from here to the 110 freeway. Cents. Today, 2018, you can go buy a house in Beverly Hills for $15 million. And here we are, double the size of the United States for just $15 million.
Oh. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Why not?
No, to them, it was a really good deal then, too. It's mind-blowingly cheap. Yes, sir.
sorry to interrupt.
You're good, buddy.
Slang Camacho.
Cool. Sounds good. So, now let's talk about the issues. Americans are super excited because we just doubled in size. We feel like we have some good stuff going on for us. Life is good. But there are problems. Question for you guys. Does it say in the Constitution that Congress and the President have the authority to purchase land? No. It does not say that. Question for you. Does it say the President and Congress can't purchase land? No. So what is Jefferson going to have to do to justify his purchase? Loose interpretation. He's going to have to use what? Elastic clause. That thing that he and his people were so mad at the Federalists for using about the bank, about the whiskey tax, about the Alien and Sedition Acts. So was the purchase constitutional? It depends on how you interpret the Constitution. But Jefferson's going to have to, despite his belief in a strict interpretation, use the elastic clause to buy and justify the purchase. Isn't that great? Yep. Also, Jefferson believed strongly in freedom and citizenship and rights. What about these people that live in New Orleans? Question for you. I have a lot of those today. This is a question we'll talk about more when we get to imperialism, which is a word that Luis just randomly uses in conversation because he thinks it's going to be right. It's never right. And the question becomes, does citizenship follow the flag? I know, that's a good question. It's an A-push question. Does citizenship follow the flag? As the flag spreads out, U.S. territory, does citizenship come with it? What do you guys think? Should it? Yeah. Does it? No. Not in this case. Not for U.S. imperialism. Not for the U.S. And we'll get there for a lot of other things in the second semester. Does citizenship follow the flag? So these people in New Orleans, think about them. They're like, what the hell? In the last 20 years, we haven't moved. We were French, and then Spanish, and then French. Now we're American. We didn't move. I've been in the same house 20 years. I've been living in 4 different countries. So the question becomes, should citizenship, as the U.S. expands, cover them? The answer is no. Despite Jefferson's strong belief in liberties and freedoms, all those French and Spanish and Dutch people, New Orleans is a very diverse city, a huge free African-American population. All those people are not citizens. They're not considered foreign citizens. They're like, what? Foreign how? You bought my land. How am I a foreigner? I didn't even move. When I look at that illegal immigration, there are illegal immigrants in America. Like, but America came to me. I didn't go to America. So it's a compelling question. The answer to that issue is no. Now, let's talk about this for a second. Will the Federalists support this purchase? No. Why should they?
It's free land.
Yeah, expanded territory, loose interpretation, elastic clause. From an ideological perspective, isn't this like Federalist 101? Yeah. Federalists are like, no, you can't do that. You can't use the elastic clause. Strict interpretation. Go figure. What? Because people like expanding the power of the government when they are the government. On both sides of things. The Federalists are saying, whoa, 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 whoa. Where in the Constitution does it say the president can buy land? I know, isn't it great?
The party switched.
Oh, they switched. It's not because anything switched. It's because the other group's in power. And they're like, whoa, 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 whoa. Find me in this Constitution where it says you can do that. Whereas 8 years prior, they're like, yeah, bank, whiskey tax, Alien Sedition Act, who cares? Loose interpretation. And now they're like, whoa, wait 1 second. Wait just 1 second. Find me in that document where it says you can buy this. Their arguments cost too much money. It's going to put the U.S. into debt. When Hamilton's controlling finances, debt! Give me all your debt. Debt's good for credit. Who cares about debt? Almost like political arguments have nothing to do with ideology and have more to do with power and control. Interesting. Interesting. Isn't this ironic? It's going to cause the debt to soar. When Hamilton's like, Virginia, give me your debt. Massachusetts, give me your debt. New York, give me your debt. Federal government wants all the debt. And now they're like, oh my God, 15 million bucks? Debt?
Adams vice president, right? That's pretty cool.
But what's the real reason why Federalists are opposed to this? Has nothing to do with economic ideology or the Constitution. Who's going to move to all this land? No.
Natives?
Farmers.
Yeoman.
Farmers. Small, immigrant, poor farmers. And now our country has double the space for poor, immigrant, small farmers. And those poor, immigrant, small farmers are going to continue voting for who?
Jefferson.
Democratic Republicans and the Jeffersonians. Interesting. The real reason they're worried that all this new land is going to be the people that are going to be loyal to the Democratic Republicans. Interesting. Now let me ask you another question. Because it's not fair to simply say that Jefferson betrayed his ideology to purchase Louisiana, because that's too superficial of an argument for a push. Politically speaking, is this in line with Jefferson's ideology? Yes or no? Not even close. Loose interpretation, using government funds, not at all. But, is it fair to say that this is 100% in line with his economic ideology?
Yes.
Because Jefferson knows if I want an agrarian-based country, what do you need a lot of? Land. Boom. So it's really easy to say that Jefferson violates his ideology because he buys Louisiana. He violates his political ideology, but you can make a compelling argument that economically speaking, this is right up his alley. All right, turn your page. So I have two views on the Louisiana Purchase. The first is Jefferson's. The second is two members of Congress, one in the Senate, one in the House of Representatives. And Jefferson's going to make a compelling argument for the purchase. And the two congressmen and the senator, White and Griswold, are going to tell us why we shouldn't make the purchase. So I'm going to give you a grand total of 7 minutes to read both side by side and do so quickly and efficiently and answer the questions for me. How is Jefferson pro-purchase, and why are the other two dudes against the purchase? And then we'll start looking at both arguments together. What's your question? Cool. 7:30. Get reading. No, that's an effect, not a cost. Lewis and Clark? Yeah, what about it? Yeah. All right, you're reading on your own. Chop, chop. Yeah. Both are arguments for and against the purchase. They're good arguments. 2 or so minutes left. We're both put our arguments for and against. Seconds. About 45 seconds. All right, so take a whole minute, please, and have a conversation so that you have an informed answer. How does Jefferson justify it? Why are these two dudes opposed to it? 1 minute, go. Chat it out.
From what I got is that like
It cannot be done unless
Isn't that funny? That's like the strict interpretation. We can't do this unless we change the whole Constitution to let him.
So for Jefferson,
Yep. God.
argument is saying that that will benefit the country economically because of the lot of history.
Yeah, right? Like how we formed, we've been here.
Agricultural economy because of more national farms, and that will benefit all of the United States because they will have more food. And then for the opposition, it's saying that they will need to change the whole Constitution
All right.
to add Louisiana.
So let me hear first from Hilda. How does Jefferson justify his purchase?
Okay. So Jefferson is basically saying how like it'll benefit the territory like economically because they're gonna have like more land to
Yeah.
like grow.
How's the land? Yeah, that works. Or fertile, good climate, good, rich soil. Does Jefferson know this?
Yeah.
No.
Thank you.
He wasn't been out there, right? He sent out Lewis and Clark. Oh, that's a cute story.
I remember that.
Good job. He does, in fact, send out Lewis and Clark. Lewis and Clark make it a point to go and find out what's out there, but that's not why he thinks the soil is good.
One guy died.
This is it right when they're making the purchase. Okay, cool. So he thinks it's a good purchase for economic reasons. Does that line up with what I just told you? That it's not with his political ideology, but it's very much in his economic ideology? Absolutely. Why are these two people in Congress opposed to it? Brenda? What's their opposition based on? There's a lot of reasons, but why? Okay, absolutely. Elian, what else? John.
I put this term like the perfect union between the parties.
They're already pointing out that it's gonna all this area is gonna be more Democratic Republican than Federalist. Okay? Okay. Ash, why else are they opposed to it? know what's out there. You're buying some sight unseen. You've never even seen it. Yeah, right? He's talking about this nice, lovely, good soil climate for growing. He doesn't realize he just bought Nebraska, the world's ugliest, flattest state. Right? Nebraska is literally just a freaking rectangle. Nothing's in.
Other than
What's in Nebraska? Corn.
What's in Nebraska? Alaska.
Brett, why else are they opposed to it? There's some social reasons as well. Those are all economic and political reasons. What's the social reason?
It's difficult to incorporate the foreigners.
Yeah! Freaking foreigners who haven't moved.
Texas?
Not yet.
Oh.
Texas is going to be there. Yeah.
Oh.
So, do you just say whatever comes to your mind? Do you have any sort of like a 3-level filter? You didn't have you said H down? Like, nobody, no, literally 0 people. That brings added value to 0 humans in this room. Unless you just thoroughly enjoy the way your voice sounds on the inside of your head that you can say, the rest of us can. H down? Yes, Houston is in fact a city in Texas. Houston doesn't even exist yet. Because the guy who Houston is named for isn't even born yet. So let me do the teaching. So despite this opposition, Louisiana is purchased. Some short-term effects. Short-term, it's a constitutional crisis. As the Federalists pointed out in their opposition, can we even do this? The only way to purchase land is to add a whole new constitutional amendment because they're going all strict interpretation on us. And we have very, very weak control over this new land. The point that it's hard to govern is true. We don't have enough people to move here yet. We don't have a big enough government to control this area. It's just kind of out there wilderness for the short term. Long term, it recreates the Northwest Ordinance precedent that all new land will be incorporated as equal land. All these new states will get 2 senators and House of Representatives voters based on population. They'll all get electoral college votes. They'll all get equality representation-wise under the Constitution, not like territories, not like colonies. They'll be full equal states. It increases the safety of the United States because it gets rid of France. So now the only real country left standing with a big foothold in the Western Hemisphere, in the North American part of the Western Hemisphere is us. And it begins to create this idea of manifest destiny, of the U.S. controlling all the land from the Atlantic Ocean to the Pacific Ocean. Something that we'll follow through the rest of period 4. Brett, you okay, buddy? Good for him. Be a racist?
No, I'm saying he loves it for certain.
No, I got it. You're being racist.
No, how's that being racist?
I talked about that.
No.
Wow. Hey. No.
Cool. So you really are the certain you're trying to like make things that don't exist. So alright guys, I'm gonna check your planner.
That was literally an advisory.
Guys,
Grades,
write your grades down.
5 minutes on your grades and emails.
Oh my god.
Alright.
I'm having like 4 times.
Nope. Alright.
You're so beautiful. Oh my god.
So there is some Native American resistance because they're the ones in the land. We see Tecumseh. Noe is an important name to know. The natives are finally realizing that peaceful coexistence is not an option. There can never be what's called a mutually beneficial relationship, where the white will benefit and the natives benefit. That's never going to happen. It's always going to be white benefit at the expense of Native Americans. So Tecumseh is going to start pushing his tribes and other tribes to stop interacting, to stop trying to have economic relationships, to stop trying to have trade relationships, to avoid contact altogether. Jefferson's hopes are he wants to create a whole reservation out here to send Jefferson's hopes are to create an entire reservation out here west of the Mississippi that will allow all the Indians to live in peace separate from the white people. But as somebody in first period pointed out, oh, he wanted all the tribes to live together in the same reservation? Because again, it's white underestimation of Native American diversity. So Jefferson runs for re-election in 1804. As you can see on the map, he wins very easily. Wins very easily. Pinckney, Charles Pinckney. Treaty Pinckney. So, but this is going to start a long-term trend of presidents almost always getting re-elected, unless their last name is Adams, and presidents almost always having a rougher second term than their first term. 8 years is a long time to be in the public spotlight. 8 years is a long time to go to be in power. If anything goes wrong, who do we blame? The president. Yeah, so 8 years is just a long time. Yes, sir. No, you only vote when you're a state. They will be once they, same with the Northwest Territory, they will be once they have enough people to be a state.
Oh.
Yeah, so once there's enough people, they can apply to be a state. For now, they're a territory. It goes district, then territory, then state.
Yeah.
We good?
Yeah.
We good. So he wins. However, his second term is plagued by a lot of controversy. A lot of controversy. The first is the Yasu Controversy. I don't need you to know anything about this controversy except the important establishment of what happens with it. Just need to be in your notes. Long story short, there's some corruption in Georgia. Georgia politicians are selling land for really cheap. It's a whole fraud situation. People are stealing money and it's all bad. But the Supreme Court rules in an important case, Fletcher versus Peck. Back to our John Marshall conversation. In Fletcher versus Peck, the Supreme Court rules that the Supreme Court can nullify any unconstitutional state laws. The Supreme Court steps in and makes a state law unconstitutional. To the board. So here's the Supreme Court, yes? What are they supposed to be checking? What two things? Constitutionality of what two things? What two branches? Executive branch actions and legislative, right? Just checking the constitutionality. Under Fletcher v. Peck, they're going to also check the constitutionality of a state action. So this is like the full opposite of the compact theory. Not only is our states not the ones who decide constitutionality, but not just that, but the federal government can also now check the constitutionality of state actions. So it really reinforces federal supremacy over states. And don't worry, we'll spend more time on Marshall Court decisions going forward on Wednesday, but it's Fletcher versus Peck and Marbury Madison that really give the Supreme Court legitimacy as the checker of constitutionality in the country. Cool. Now Jefferson, foreign policy-wise, his big issue is the Barbary Pirates. The pirates. These pirates in the Mediterranean Sea have been being paid bribes by Washington Adams to not steal our ships that are trying to trade. Under Jefferson, the bribes increase. So we can either pay more money to bribe these pirates, not steal our stuff, or we can do something about it. In Jefferson's case, we send the U.S. Navy and the Marines, it's the first time the Marines were used in U.S. history, to try to force these pirates to stop stealing our stuff. There's a treaty reached. The treaty works in America's favor. It shows early on a show of force against these Barbary pirates, and commerce in the Mediterranean is safe. It's not that big of a deal, but it exposes that Jefferson doesn't like using the military until he needs the military. Now, on slavery, we have a separate issue altogether before we get into the final issue of Jefferson's presidency. On slavery, does Jefferson own slaves?
Yeah.
Is Jefferson pro-slavery?
No.
It depends.
To an extent.
So yeah, to what extent? So, we promised to not discuss the slave trade in Congress until 1808. as part of one of those compromises, it was a 20-year window. The South gets ignoring slavery for 20 years. The Federalists got the power in the Constitution to regulate interstate commerce. Well, 1808 is coming up. In 1806, Jefferson's like, hey, this problem's coming up in 2 years. Why don't we start working on a law that's going to give us a final solution to this problem? Not pro or anti-slavery, but what are we going to do about it? How are we going to deal with slavery? Since in 1808, it's about to be an issue again. We got to ignore it for 20 years because of that constitutional compromise. Typically, we can ignore it for 20 years, but it's about to be an issue again. So Jefferson just suggests to Congress, let's prepare some sort of law that deals with slavery in finality. Southerners in Congress lose their damn minds. We refuse to even entertain the idea that Congress has the right to negotiate with slavery. Slavery is a decision best left to the southern states to regulate for themselves. Let the states regulate slavery. If you in the North don't want slavery, fine. Don't have slavery. That's your own decision. But slavery should and will remain a state decision. We will decide what to do about our slavery. Hence begins the states' rights argument to defend slavery. That it shouldn't be a federal government problem. This is the time of Democratic Republicans. States' rights. Let states regulate. Let states decide what to do about slavery. Congress should have no say what the states do about their own issues with slavery or other states' rights issues. Interesting. So from 1806 forward, we're going to use that states' rights argument to justify slavery by saying, oh yeah, it's not a national government issue, it's a state or local issue. However, once this 1808 date comes, the two sides agree on a very important but not that effective law. As of 1808, we stop importing slaves. The transatlantic, so the international slave trade, is ended in 1808. Why is the South okay with that? If they need slavery so badly. Yeah, they already have a self-sustaining population. The slave population is going, significantly growing, just like American population is. So they're like, yeah, fine, we'll agree to that. We'll give in on that compromise, knowing full well they don't need to import any more slaves. Slave importation was already declining anyway, because it's a self-sustaining population. However, if you are caught smuggling slaves, it's not the federal government that will get you in trouble. It is the local or the state government itself that will put you on trial and put you in jail for it. Wait a second. Why is that kind of sus? Louder.
Because if they get accused in the South, like, they're just going to have a bias and not put them in jail.
What a concept. Is anybody importing slaves in Massachusetts? No. Are they importing slaves in South Carolina? And they get arrested in South Carolina? What's South Carolina going to say?
You're cool.
Don't do that. Don't ever do that again. Those right. Mississippi's not a thing yet. You only look. So that's the slave issue. Now the last issue is arguably the most important, because it's going to be the one thing that actually damages the Democratic Republicans politically. Now, in this time period, we're still having trouble with foreign countries attacking our ships and stealing them. What is that called? Impressments. The French are fighting the British. Who do we want to trade with? Whoever. We're broke. We'll trade with anybody. So we're trying to trade with the French. That pisses the British off. We're trying to trade with the British. That pisses the French off. So both sides are impressing our ships and our sailors as they fight each other. The British Navy impresses more than 1,000 sailors every year. 1,000 Americans get basically kidnapped and put into the British Navy. Congratulations, you're now a member of the British Navy. It's like, congratulations, you and New Orleans are now part of America. What? Wait, what happened? So, for a 5-year period, we're losing 1,000 sailors a year and millions of dollars worth of goods through impressment. What are our options? Attack. Right? Ever heard the phrase, you and what army? That applies. We don't really have much of an army. Jefferson cut it. So the solution is the best solution, the worst solution. The best solution ever, it's the Embargo Act of 1807. We're going to just stop trading with everybody. We're going to take our ball and go home. You hurt my feelings. I'm taking my ball. I'm going home.
Why is that me?
Because that will teach them. That will show the British and the French that we are not to be messed with. You do not impress our sailors. You do not take our goods. We won't trade with anybody. But what does that imply? What does that imply that we do on the world stage?
We're important.
It implies that we are important. The only way this convinces Britain or France to respect us as neutrals is if we matter to them. And both countries are like,
Good job.
good for you guys. Yeah, let us, yeah, right? Is that
You're doing great.
American?
Yeah,
Oh, those
so-
fools? So, it's the importance is we think this is going to matter, and it does not matter at all. Embargo means to end trade. What? So we're gonna prohibit all sale to all foreign ports, and in a very anti-Jeffersonian way, we're going to use the military to enforce the law. Isn't that very Whiskey Rebellion-esque? Oh, you don't want to follow the law? We'll use the military to force you to follow the law. Jefferson would have lost his goddamn mind if Washington or Adams had tried to use the military to enforce the law, because he lost his goddamn mind when they did in the Whiskey Rebellion. And yet here we are using the military to enforce the law. What's the impact? A couple things we should know. One, people should start smuggling. But two, our export spending, how much we're actually exporting, falls from 108 million bucks to 22 million bucks. It kills our economy. Kills it. Because we're still very reliant on foreign goods. Agricultural prices fall because we can't sell our stuff. Nobody has any money. Who does that hurt? What kind of voters? Yeah, Jeffersonian voters. The shipping industry is ruined because we have nothing to ship. However, what does this accidentally spark? American industrialism. The one thing Jefferson wanted to avoid was an industrial-based economy. By embargoing Europe, we got to buy our manufactured goods somewhere. Where we're going to buy them? Home. So you can say that long-term, this backfires, or short-term and long-term it backfires, but longer-term it backfires because we stop relying on foreign goods for manufactured goods, start making them at home, which is the one type of economy Jefferson did not want. Unemployment goes way up, and it has little to zero effect on British and French markets. We really showed them. We really showed them what's up. So do me a favor, please. And for both the argument for and against, just put read later on the top because we're going to move on. Please. Yeah, read later. Because you should read both arguments, but I want to get to the cartoon.
Wow.
So, take a minute 30, please. And there's the cartoon. It's on the board. It's on your notes. What is this cartoon? What's the message? What's the perspective this cartoon is trying to push? Okay? 90-second chat with your partner. What is this trying to get at? Go.
Okay, well, you can see that the turtle has a, like, it's the same thing.
No, it's not.
Yes. Okay, the turtle has a, like,
Yeah.
in its palm, hand, claw. It's claw. That's a claw.
Super fine. It's like sugar or something sweeter based.
Okay.
HIP on the freaking wrong page. HIP.
No.
What's the context? Embargo Act. Who's the audience? What's the purpose?
Super fine. Probably on like beer or something. Or wine.
Okay, well then,
He grabbed me. Again?
Yeah, the turtle's trying to
Okay,
stop this
so
person
I
from
know
trading.
that you're talking about the Embargo Act because it was in the homework. So this guy's trying to trade for America doesn't matter. That's right.
So, I want to get your eyes up here, please. What's the turtle supposed to signify? Yeah, it's authority. That's keeping us from trading with? It's a British flag. So here this guy, super fine, implies it's something, probably sugar or rum, something in the sweetener department of things. And we're trying to trade it. This guy's mad. You can't print the word damn in the newspaper, so it's bleeped out. Damn, it's how he nicks him. He grabs him. But this guy, oh, this cursed, oh, grab me, it got me. What's oh, grab me backwards?
Embargo.
Embargo.
Oh, what? Oh my God. Yeah. I know. This cursed oh, grab me.
Discures.
So, what is our context? Embargo of 1807. Audience, those who are anti-embargo. Purpose is to demonstrate the damage the embargo is doing to the economy. Point of view is anti-embargo. Pretty straightforward. Now, I'm going to have you skip that last short text as well, but it needs to obviously be read because it's necessary. 1807. So put read later on that short chunk there as well, if you could be so kind.
I told you too.
We got 5 minutes to finish strong, guys. Right now. If you say it every day, it might come true one day. Enough? Oh, we know. We got 12 minutes left. Yeah, we're good.
An hour and 40 minutes. One check.
So, way more than 5, I lied with 12. So what happens is this embargo allows for the Federalists to gain back some political power. Why? Because Republicans are, in this case, trash. Sure, be more specific. Give me a better political answer. Go ahead, Luis. Why do they lose the trust of the people?
Hypocrisy.
Sure, I think it's simpler than that. The Embargo Act hurts the economy. Who do we blame when the economy goes down? Yeah, whoever's in charge. So because the Embargo Act hurts us economically, and that hurt is most felt in our shipping industry, which is in the Northeast, the Federalists gain back some power in Congress. However, at the end of Jefferson's second term, the Republican Congress is going to end or repeal the embargo. So why does it fail? In a very simple answer, why does the Embargo Act fail?
Because they lost a lot of money.
Sure, why else?
And no one to replenish it.
Because we don't matter. Yeah, right. Like public opinion's like, this is not a cool law. We're losing money. We're losing trade. What's the big deal? Can we just trade again, please? It fails because the only way embargoes and these kinds of sanctions work is if you matter. We don't matter. The Embargo Act is going to eventually be replaced by my favorite law in terms of its name in APUSH history, the Non-Intercourse Act of 1809. The Non-Intercourse, we call that the Napoleon Act. The Non-Intercourse Act of 1809, Non-Intercourse Act. Oh yes, that's not light. So, What? Nothing. So, the Non-Intercourse Act, which is important because the Non-Intercourse Act says we won't trade with Britain or France, but we could trade with Spain, with the Dutch, maybe some little miniature Russians. You're a tank? Bro, you could be carried away out of the class by 100 strong ants. Oh no, I've heard you been flexing on Snapchat trying to show those guns off. I got all kinds of things. I got people. Don't worry what I got. They'll be using lectures at a later date. We're talking about American foreign policy.
I never flex like that. I never.
Because you can't. So, I got people. So, but the Non-Intercourse Act is like, hey, we got problems with Britain and France, but we could try to trade with everybody else. Is that going to work? What's then at that point to keep Britain and France from still impressing our ships as we try to trade with the Spanish? Not much. Not to mention the two biggest powers, financially speaking, in the world are Britain and France. So the Non-Intercourse Act is not going to work, but it shows that we're modifying our policy. That's followed by McCone's Bill number 2. I don't know what happened to number 1, but McCone's Bill number 2 says we will trade with Great Britain or France, whichever side recognizes our rights as a neutral first. Thinking it's going to pit them against each other, and both sides are still like, y'all still don't matter. Y'all still don't matter. We're going to continue on barring other nations. That doesn't work either. And then 2 years later, we're going to actually go to war with England over this issue. But that's for class on Thursday. The War of it. You're still speaking? I hear a small voice. Somewhere in the distance. Is that an attempted tricep I hear?
Yeah, hear some?
Is that a bone? There ain't much else in there. This was over here flexing skin. Don't know what I got when I got people, bro. I always have people. So the legacy of Jefferson is important. The legacy of Jefferson is legacy 1, expansion. Population and size of the country both grow significantly. This western expansion, this new frontier, is very important in American history. Second, the executive branch is expanded through actions like the Louisiana Purchase is an easy one. That's an obvious one. But what about the example of using the armed military to enforce the embargo? That's important. However, true to his ideology, the role of government in day-to-day life shrinks. Government plays less of a role in day-to-day existence. There's no more whiskey tax to pay, that's government. Slave tax, property tax, bank, tariff. There's less of a role of the government in everyday life. And true to his ideology, the government does become less aristocratic. Less run by these ruling Federalist Northeast elites. Partially to his actions and partially due to their own idiocy, the Federalists are dead by 1816. And much like his two predecessors, Washington and Adams, he keeps us out of foreign conflicts with both the Barbary Pirates and, we may hate the Embargo Act, it's stupid, it doesn't work, but at least it's a better option than going to war. It's important, right? Like, we look at all kinds of things. Washington's proclamation of neutrality keeps us out of war. Adams negotiating over the XYZ affair keeps us out of war. The Embargo Act doesn't work, doesn't solve the problem, keeps us out of war. So there's this recurring precedent of doing whatever you can diplomatically to keep us out of military conflict. However, it's a cool question. He's better known through his contributions to American society before becoming president. his biggest contribution to American politics is the Declaration of Independence. A super underrated contribution is his Virginia Statute of Religious Freedom, which is where we really see in American politics the birth of the separation of church and state. He's super important in the creation of educational systems. He founds the University of Virginia, one of the early fantastic colleges in American history. I was there for a history seminar summer before last for a whole week. Amazing place. Absolutely amazing. I spent a week sleeping in dorms that were built in the 1870s. Each room had a fireplace and no air conditioning. It was July in Virginia. It was great. It was. It's quite hot. So, I ask, what's more significant? His presidential legacy or his non-presidential legacy?
It's not.
Take 30 seconds, talk about it. Have an answer with why.
But I agree that
A lot of presidents get the federal work. You're having trouble seeing when it comes to Hamilton. All right.
why?
So, real quick, it's kind of a fun conversation. Brett is arguing like, well, yeah, he did, no, you're not wrong. He did all this important stuff. He doubled the size of the U.S. Nobody else did that. So then I ask you, if that's the case, who's the other president that gives us a huge chunk of land?
Oh my God.
Mexico.
That the other president is Mexico, because President Mexico. The other president who does that is I'll give you two guesses.
Lincoln.
Nope.
Okay.
James K. Polk. Exactly. So that rebuts your argument that he's important with land, because the other guy that did that, who?
Jeff.
Okay, it was successful, yeah.
Cool. So I'll leave you with this. That was a good, rousing conversation. I appreciate it. Jefferson insisted. That these three things be on his tombstone when he died. Here's buried Thomas Jefferson. 1, author of the Declaration of Independence. Pretty important. 2, author of the Statute of Virginia for Religious Freedom, separation of church and state. Pretty important. And 3, father of the University of Virginia. It doesn't say purchaser of Louisiana. Author of the Embargo Act of 1807. Owner of multiple snapping turtles that enforced said embargo. Owner of slaves. Fighter of Barbary Pirates. The walking contradiction. So it's important that we grapple with what he believed and what he did and where those things line up and where those things less than line up. It helps us in history. Great job today.